Well, for those of you who would like, I just really know because I'm like, I feel like I'm on a stampede, the way that I live my life. In terms of learning, I just try to get to the most deep things that I can and try to share it with others. But there's just some background that people should have. On the right side of this page, we have a listing of the 10 spheros of, of Olam Ha'atzilus. So the first one is Keter, then it goes Chochma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Umalchus. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now it says up here, this is the order of the 10 spheros. I don't know if you can see that. There it is, the order of the 10 spheros. But there's actually 11 here. So what's going on? Now let's come over here and let's look at a different formation. Now this formation is actually not the formation of a partzuf, or what we call a partzuf, which is a sixth system of reflecting the light of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu, so to speak. That system is represented here in 3 lines. A right line, a left line, and a center line. And here what we see is actually the structure of a partzuf, is to give us the idea that they're actually interconnected. These interconnections could get really, very complicated if you're looking at it in terms of just pure physics. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan does stuff like that. Anyway, this is what it is that here's Kesser at the very top. Now, the reason why there's 11, the answer to that, is because Kesser is really the bottom of the parts of up above it. So it's not really part of this system. It feeds into the system, of course, because this is called the Panemius. It's the Panemius of the whole system. So on the right of Kesser, you have Chochmah. On the left, you have Bina. Down below Kesser, along this is called the middle line. Along the middle line, you have Das. Then you have Tiferes. And then you have Yesod and Malchus. So let's look at the right line. So the right line is the right line called Chacham, or Chachma, Chesed, and Netzach. So if you ever listen to these shiurim that we're doing, it's just really, there's no introduction. We just get into it and start going. Here's a little introduction. So this was a Bina. This is the line of Bina, called the left line. It's also called by the Kabbalists as Baga. That is the first letters of these words, which is Bina, Gevurah, and Hod. Now all of them flow into the Yesod. So as you see that all lines lead to Yesod, and then the Yesod, all of what is flowed into Yesod then flows into Malchus. Now Malchus really represents the bottom. Now, there's a Malchus of a Malchus of a Malchus of a Malchus, and wherever that is, we're there. We're at the bottom. So that's the concept of all of this flows, and so let's give us a little bit idea. And this is actually the Likutei Maharan, where we're getting this from, and we'll see this again. And let's come over here and let's talk about something else. Let me see if I can, whoops, what happened? What happened? There we go, we're going back on. Something happened. Anyway, question over here is, Rabbi Nachman is talking about music. The music of a person, a menagim, a musician, who really is singing the words of the Torah. That's your Talmud Chacham who studies Torah, and he's going to get into the concept of late at night, after midnight, especially when no one can see him. We're going to get to all of that. We're going to see what that says. So he says that there's another kind of music too. There's a music that destroys. Now, when I originally was thinking about this, and I just really, why do I think about it? But I was thinking that what do you mean? He means like, rock and roll or just kind of rap music and stuff like that. That was what he's talking about. Don't listen to Gentile music. Well, maybe that's a good idea, but I'm not sure that necessarily is what we're talking about here. Not just that. Certainly maybe that. But he talks about the two birds. The unclean birds, and the clean birds, the chirping birds. And one represents a concept of, let's say, the negative concept of lashon hara, of speaking bad about people. That is a certain type of music. We don't recognize it as music because we don't use musical instruments, but the emphasis and all the words, the emotion that we attach to this is a kind of a ruach. And that ruach could be very, very powerful and positive, or, and then in terms of when it is demonstrated as being directed towards Hashem and His praise, or it could be selfish and go that route. So with this, it's possible to reconcile the juxtapositions in the Mishnah where it says, get yourself a rabbi, acquire for yourself a companion, and judge everyone favorably. So let me see if I can get this focused a little bit better. So he says, by listening to song in the manner explained above, and becoming absorbed in it, so that when another sings joyously, he too rejoices in God. When another sings with spiritual inspiration, he too is inspired and contemplates repentance. He then rectifies the concept of building up malchus. We should really look at that, but he doesn't have too much on that. Let me see, does he? Well, maybe we'll look at that in a minute. Namely, Netzach and Hod, as mentioned above. Now, here's our friends Netzach and Hod back down here. So what he's saying is at the bottom of the line of Chochmah is Netzach. The bottom of the line of the left line, which is the line of Baga or Bina, is Hod. These two feed Malchus. By bringing the Shefa down into Netzach, to that period and into the Yesod, we make a connection which is called the Yichud with Malchus. Going on. So he says like this, let's look, he rectifies the concept of building up Malchus. This would be interesting to know what he means by that. Let me see if I can bring this down so we can see it better. So, he writes like this, here Rabbi Nachman begins to relate to Malchus as it pertains to each person individually. That is, each person commensurate, corresponding to his spiritual level, has the ability to rectify malchus. In other words, by making a connection which is pure and heartfelt, that person can make a rectification in his aspect of malchus. Now the Bir Likutei adds, Rabbi Nachman next comments on the Mishnayach teaching, get yourself a rabbi. So from this words we learn that for a person to rectify his personal aspect of malchus, in other words, to make the devekus that we're always thinking about and talking about, he must be very careful not to be led by his own knowledge of Torah. Now this is an aspect of people trying to do the right thing by learning Torah. But he says that a person should not be misled by how great he is. He must now allow study shalol l'shma to have a detrimental effect on him. So it's possible that a person winds up learning, he spends a time with it, but really he wants to be the head in the base medrash. He wants to be the head man in the yeshiva. Much worse, however, is when a person thinks he is worthy of being a rabbi when he's not. Assuming authority not rightfully his can be likened to usurping a Malchus kingdom from its rightful ruler. In other words, if you're fit to be a leader of people, that's one thing. But to fit yourself in because you want to be, that's where you want to be, that's all selfish. He then blemishes Malchus even more, so he really makes a flaw in Malchus. So in that case, he benefits from studying at night because of the modesty that it instills. But so he says like this, when you study at nighttime and it's late at night, there's nobody else around and nobody knows, he says this breeds a tremendous amount of modesty. So I'm thinking that's interesting to use those words. And so Rashi says that Ein Davar Yafa K'Tznius. There's nothing more beautiful than modesty. So he rectifies the concept of building up Malchus. We have that here. We have a little cough going around in the family. For his speech then reflects the two birds of holiness, that is Malchus rectified. Now, the question is what we saw the picture of Malchus. Malchus is the bottom of everything. So what we're talking about is that the Malchus of Atzilus, which is the Malchus of really nothingness, There's no physicality at all, but it's pure, it's light, it's refracted light. It's already been condensed a little bit. So it's a more thickened light, but it's just pure nothing light. When that malchus becomes affected and built up, everything, it's a template for everything else that comes out, even our world. And that's the idea of building up malchus. Now, here we have just a little bit more, and let's just see what we can do in just a few more minutes. This is get yourself a rabbi. Rectify the aspect of malchus. Now, how is that? It is accomplished by the idea of, so the Hebrew word, so that is, by the way, the Hebrew word which means kaneh. Kaneh, liknoit, or liknot, liknos. So he says that the idea there is to acquire for yourself. So that's what liknos es amrab, so as a rabbi. So you should get yourself a chaver, for yourself a companion. That is by means of the kana. How do you do that? Because the same word, just pronounced slightly different, is the word windpipe, via which the voice emerges. So the voice comes out. So you have to perfect, you have to do tshuva on what you're saying. A little bit more. So he says, this joins the two cherubs, so that they are face to face, as the embrace of a man and his consort. So this is the concept of intimacy. It is possible for us to become intimate with the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. How do we do that? We have to purify ourselves. This is what he's talking about. He's talking about how do we get our prayers answered. The main prayer that you get, the main answer that you get, is a relationship with eternity. That's the main thing, because this world is flying by. So he said, when the Jewish people perform the will of the Holy One, then everything is in order. But then when a person rectifies his aspect of malchus, he is able to rule over whatever he chooses. Now, this is a little bit hard for me to understand. I'll read on. He could bring death to one person or give life to another. How is that? The world would then be ravaged. So the Rebbe Nachman says, now you have to go, I have to really think about what he is trying to say here. But then when a person rectifies his aspect of malchus, so he has, the Pirush says he has corrected his personal aspect. In other words, we all are children of malchus. We have a direct line to that malchus, because malchus is feeding us. That is what brings us life. So we have that possible. The person has rectified that and has himself a direct channel to malchus, a very high level. That person could really give life to another or take it away. The world would then be ravaged. So if that was possible, then this would be altogether wrong. It's the wrong idea. To this the Mishnah says, and judge everyone favorably. It's necessary to judge each person favorably, for the Holy One has no desire in the world's destruction. He did not create it as a wasteland, but formed it to be inhabited. Now, this is a little hard for me, I have to admit. This is really not that easy for me. Now, tomorrow we're going to take up the, God's willing, the little piece here down at the bottom. And that'll be the shir for the next day. This is Baruch Fleischman. We're learning Likutei Maharan at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel.